Revelation 12 is the wrecking ball of eschatology. So the great sign of Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, the great sign, a great and wondrous sign that appeared in the heavens, a woman clothed with the sun, crown of 12 stars over her head, the moon at her feet, and she was in agony to give birth. This is a actual astronomical alignment that took place in September of 2017. So the Revelation 12 sign actually posed a huge problem. It's the wrecking ball of eschatology. It poses a huge, gigantic problem for every single eschatological view out there, whether it's pre-tribulation, dispensationalism, pre-wrath, mid or post-tribulation. The Revelation 12 sign sort of came out of the blue. It hit us by surprise. Well, maybe we were given a few years heads up. At the time of the blood moon tetrads, 2014, 2015, when these eclipses were taking place on Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles, we sort of got a heads up about the idea that there was going to be yet another sign in the heavens that would be taking place in 2017. So when I was looking at all this end time stuff, and really it was probably 2014 when I sort of kind of, really got the, oh my, things are happening and I need to pay attention kind of heads up, although I've been following end time stuff since the 70s. People were talking about another sign in 2017, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I hope I don't have to wait till 2017. That would be so long. I don't think I can wait. The Revelation 12 sign, people got very excited about it. They were anticipating it. The month August in 2017, there was this big solar eclipse that traversed the whole of the United States. And then the following month was the Revelation 12 sign. And I happened to be able to go to a watchmen conference here in Boise in 2017, a lot of great speakers, and everybody had sort of an unspoken expectation that the rapture might be, right around the corner. And the Revelation 12 sign actually took place at the tail end of that 2-day Feast of Trumpets. And a lot of dispensational teachers believe that the Feast of Trumpets is the day when people are going to be resurrected and people are going to be raptured. Now, when the rapture didn't happen, a lot of people were really disappointed. So some people just sort of walked away from the whole thing and just said, oh, I don't need this anymore. And other people were very confused that the Revelation 12 sign seemed to be highly significant, but apparently it wasn't talking about the rapture. So what was it talking about? And another way that people would view this would be, well, I guess we just don't know what that was, and let's just keep moving on. One of the things that was really surprising about the Revelation 12 sign was that it just came out of the blue. It just sort of came out of nowhere, and it wasn't a part of any established historical eschatology. It wasn't a part of, pre-tribulation dispensationalism. Preterists didn't have some kind of a fulfillment for that. Everybody who had some kind of charts and graphs or some kind of book or movie or anything about end-time eschatology, not a single one of them incorporated the Revelation 12 sign into their data points. Once you get a new piece of information, and particularly if you believe the Bible is true, you believe Jesus is going to come back, that it's prophesied in the Bible and it's prophesied in the book of Revelation, and then you go to Revelation 12 and you see a fulfillment of this prophecy, okay, you've just been handed a new piece of information that you didn't have a place for it. There's no place for it. You don't know what to do with it when it comes to your already pre-established eschatology. So Revelation 12, 1 and 2, which describes this astronomical alignment, people conflated that, or they combined it or meshed it into the sign of the dragon, which actually does talk about a rapture, okay? It's a separate sign. It's not part of that first sign. But what people did is they conflated the two. They brought them together, and they thought that somehow or another that the Revelation 12 sign would have something to do with the rapture. But very interestingly, it actually pointed to a particular day in time. If you were to ask anybody, when did the Revelation 12 sign happen, and they knew about it or familiar with it, they would be able to tell you, oh, that was September 23rd of 2017. They can attach a date to it. Think about it. If someone can put a date to something in the book of Revelation, what does that do to your already established eschatology? How do you work that in? I think that pre-tribulation dispensationalists were hit particularly hard by the Revelation 12 sign, because here is something that claims to be a sign, and it's a great sign. It's not just a sign, it's a great sign, and you can put a date on it. But they also have the idea that the rapture is signless. There's no sign that accompanies the rapture. And so if you have the Revelation 12 sign and it was for reals and you put a date on it, what does that do to our signless, imminent rapture of believers? How does that fit in? Okay, so what we have here is it's a conflict that has to be reconciled in some way. Either the rapture is signless or it's not. And if it is signless, what's the point of the Revelation 12 sign? Why do we call it a sign? Why did God put it in there? It's in there for a reason, right? And we believe the word of God. We trust that Revelation is giving us actual prophecy that we can interpret, and that every word is meaningful in its context. Every word has a specific definition, and that we should be able to look at the context, look at the symbolism, and be able to figure this out, right? Okay, so you can see we've got some problems here. If the sign was meaningful, okay, if it actually was the fulfillment, and it was pointing to an actual date, we could actually write that in our Bible, September 23rd, 2017. That kind of makes it seem as though like we're in the book of Revelation right now. We're in end time prophecy. Well, we already kind of know that, right? We already know we're in end time prophecy, but this is now very specific that, Revelation 12, 1 and 2 says, right now we're in end time prophecy. We're in the book. Does that mean then that we're in the tribulation and that somehow or another we sort of skipped over a bunch of things that we thought were going to happen, including the rapture? How are we supposed to take this? And according to dispensationalism, the rapture is the very first thing that takes place that sets off everything else. Well, if Revelation 12 sign fulfilled Revelation 12, 1 and 2, it looks like there's competition there for what is going to be the very first thing in Revelation to actually take place. And it seems as though the Revelation 12 sign might have been the first thing, and that it's not the rapture. The second sign of Revelation is the sign of the dragon. And rather than this story, which is using the same symbol of the woman, okay, representing Israel, only this time the woman Israel is Israel on earth. It's not Virgo or Betula in the starry heavens. So even though there may be a corresponding celestial alignment that corresponds with what's taking place on earth, it's actually the stuff that's happening on earth that really affects us the most. So what is the story in the sign of the dragon? I mean, there's a story being told there, and the sign of the dragon takes place after the sign of the woman. Okay, so if the sign of the woman had a specific fulfillment and that took place in 2017, then the sign of the dragon is what's going to be happening next. Well, what is the sign of the dragon? What's in that sign that we should be looking at? And have people who already have an established eschatology, a traditional established way of viewing the end times, have they made room in their timelines, in their doctrine, for the Revelation 12 sign and for the sign of the dragon? Is there room in there? And where do they get placed inside of their eschatological timeline? The thing is you can't believe that Revelation 12, 1 and 2 was fulfilled and still hold on to your old beliefs, whether dispensational pre-tribulationism or preterism or mid or post-trib raptures. pre-wrath, I don't care what it is. If you haven't found a place or you haven't made room for these two signs in your eschatology, you can't also believe that they may have a literal fulfillment and that one of them has actually already been fulfilled. So this problem that I'm pointing out may, to the average person may not seem like, there's really even a problem there. But if you're someone who teaches a specific end time, theology, and you're teaching something that is a systematic theology that was handed down to you by other people, that you learned it from and they learned it from someone else, that this is already a body of work. And none of those people in the past included the Revelation 12 sign. Okay, it's not in anybody's end time stuff. That you can't at the same time hold on to your old eschatology and think that the Revelation 12 sign had meaning or was fulfilled. And this is the really nasty, messy, serious problem that a lot of Bible teachers, Bible scholars are presented with. And this is why you won't hear them talking about the Revelation 12 sign. Very seldom. And if they do, it'll be in passing, or they won't actually, or they're kind of like Jell-O. You can't nail them down to what they believe the sign was all about. So you can see how Revelation 12 really was the wrecking ball of all traditional Orthodox eschatologies that are out there. Every single person who doesn't include the fulfillment of Revelation 12 is either not awake and paying attention, or they're too afraid of what might happen if they decide to incorporate that, and what it means for a person who is invested in another eschatology. If you're invested in pre-tribulational dispensationalism, this is going to be a very big leap for you to be able to actually consider abandoning certain aspects of what you believe about the end times in order to incorporate something that pretty much obviously happened. So I'm just going to touch on a little bit on the sign of the dragon, not so much to explain what it means, but to explain why many of the interpretations that we have been presented about what the sign of the dragon means are really wrong. Okay, so the dragon is standing before the woman who gives birth to the male child. The dragon wants to devour the male child, okay, not the woman, wants to devour the male child, but the child is caught up to God and to his throne. And before Satan stands before the woman, he casts down a third of the stars to the earth. Okay, so here's how most people interpret that. They'll say that eons and eons ago, when Satan fell, he took a third of the angels with him, okay, when he fell, and that the child that's caught up to God and to his throne is Jesus, who was caught up at his ascension. When Satan takes his tail and casts a third of the stars to the earth, I mean, the stars are angels. We're talking about angels here. And he casts a third of the stars to the earth. That isn't something that happened in the past. We're talking about something that's going to happen in the future. If the Revelation 12 sign, the first one that we read about, was a end-time prophetic event, you can be sure that the second sign, the sign of the dragon, will also be an end-time prophetic event. It's not something that happened in the past. This is basically a Catholic doctrine that says that Satan took a third of all God's angels and a third of the angels sided with him. This is the only place in the whole Bible that even makes a reference to a third of the angels. And it doesn't say that they fell. It says they were cast. Okay, Satan actually takes control of them and casts them to earth. So we know that angels did side with him. We just don't know how many. But Satan only has control of his angels. Okay, and in this case, he's casting a third of them, a third of his, to the earth. Satan is making them come to the earth. This is a future event, and I believe it has to do with this hyped up alien invasion thing, that part of the zeitgeist now that's around, the whole world, talking about stuff in the sky. I'll be talking more about that when I talk about the sign of the dragon. The other thing is the man-child being Christ. Well, I can see that being Christ, but at his ascension, was Christ forcefully snatched away so that Satan would not devour him? Like, no, that's crazy talk. Satan has no power over Jesus. He had absolutely zero power over him after Jesus rose from the dead. And at his ascension, there's a totally different word that's used. It's not the word for rapture, harpazo. The word that used when Jesus ascended is a word that just means lift up. I lift up. And his ascension, his lifting up, was so slow and gentle and gradual that the disciples could just watch him go up into the cloud. Okay, this was not a violent snatching away, which is what is described here in Revelation 12. The child is violently snatched away to God and to his throne. So the traditional teaching about, the interpretation for the sign of the dragon is really in error. It's not a correct interpretation. This is not a historical thing. None of this stuff happened in the past. This is all part of the future. And this is all stuff that's in our future, okay? Because we're actually in the book of Revelation. So there's a few signs that I think were very important that actually confirmed that the Revelation 12 sign was indeed the fulfillment of Revelation 1 and 2. And I've mentioned these before, but I want to mention them again. The first one is the fact that the 70th anniversary of Israel becoming a nation, which included two major events. The 70th anniversary happened in 2017. Okay, so a lot of people go, well, no, Israel became a nation in 1948. Okay, you have to remember this, that in the Hebrew reckoning of time, as far as when their civil New Year starts, their New Year starts in September and it goes to September. So there were two events that took place between September of 1947 and September of 1948. The first event was the UN resolution, which allowed for the partition of Palestine, which was necessary to pave the way for Israel to become a state a few months later, May 14th of 1948. But this 1947 to 48 is the Hebrew year that we're looking at. Okay, so I date it from 1947. The Zionist Congress, 1897, Balfour Declaration, 1917, the UN Resolution, 1947, the Jerusalem recaptured, 1967, the Revelation 12 sign, 2017. I hope you'll see there's sevens at the end of all of these things. They all have sevens at the end, okay, which makes it very significant. 120 years from the first Zionist Congress to the Revelation 12 sign, 100 years between the Balfour Declaration and the Revelation 12 sign, 70 years between the UN resolution and the Revelation 12 sign, 50 years between Israel retaking Jerusalem and the Revelation 12 sign. Okay, 120, 100, 70, and 50. This is a very significant date, and if you believe in a 70 to 80 year generation, fig tree generation, then we've got 10 years from to 2027. Okay, that's the 80-year upper limit that Jesus should return in. The other thing that's really important is that the Revelation 12 sign also took place over a Jewish feast day. So this is the Feast of Trumpets. It was at the end of the Feast of Trumpets. And that is, to me, very significant. Part of what it says to me is that God is signaling that he's about to begin his end time plan for Israel. And that he will probably also begin to use the feast days again as signposts for timing indicators and clues to what he's doing. So the Revelation 12 sign not only gave us a date, okay, that puts us in Revelation. It happened on the 70th anniversary of Israel becoming a nation. And it happened over the Feast of Trumpets, which is an indicator. It's a sign that God is about ready to work with the Jews again, and that God is probably going to be using his feast days again. The other thing that I find really interesting is that Jesus' earthly ministry at his first coming may have actually begun in the year 27. That's when John the Baptist would have begun proclaiming as the forerunner for the Messiah that, prepare the way of the Lord. And he probably was manifested to the nation. Remember, he was in the wilderness until the day of his manifestation to Israel. And that was probably at the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, he was the sound of a voice crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. And when we talk about the Feast of Trumpets, we're talking about the day of shouting, the day of crying out, or the day of loud noise. And certainly that's what John the Baptist said he was. And so Jesus was then baptized and started a 3.5-year ministry. If the Revelation 12 sign in 2017 was sort of a 10-year heads up that Christ would return by 2027, the 80-year upper limit, then we can expect that there would have been 2,000 years between Jesus' first coming, when he came at the beginning of his ministry, proclaiming the kingdom of God, and 2027 when he returns to actually set up the kingdom. So that would be 2 of God's 1,000-year days. So I actually have some questions here that you may want to ask your pastor, or ask, somebody who has a very solid position on eschatology, and just ask them a few of these questions. And I do have them in a handout that I have for you in the show notes here. But the first question is, how did the great sign of Revelation 12 factor into your denomination's or your own personal, traditional, historic, eschatological, doctrinal position as of 2017? In other words, did your denomination or did your view of end times actually already have the Revelation 12 sign in it, or was it just a total surprise when it happened? The second question is, did your denomination's views or your own personal views on eschatology change in any way since the discovery of the sign? Okay, in other words, did you try to figure out how that sign was going to work into or play into sort of an end time timeline? The third question is, would you be willing to abandon certain aspects of your current eschatological doctrine in exchange for an eschatology which incorporates the fulfillment of the great sign? Would you be willing to change some things about how you view end times so that you can actually put in the fulfillment of the Revelation 12 sign? In what ways would your life be impacted if you changed any aspects of your current understanding of end times? Okay, let me tell you, if you decide that you are going to change some things you believe about the end times, the timing of the rapture, or really anything, if you were to change any of that in a somewhat significant way, not everything, but some of it, how would that impact your life? Okay, well, I can tell you that if you are a pastor, or if you're somebody who has books out there or videos or movies, or you actually make money from what you're promoting now, this is going to be really hard for you, and you probably won't make the leap. That can, just from personal experience, I can tell you that it will be very hard for you, and most people who have a strong position that they have held for many, many years are not going to give it up. For people who are fairly new to all of this, they'll be willing to change to incorporate fulfilled prophecy from the end time book, which is Revelation. If something seems pretty obvious as a fulfillment, which is the Revelation 12 sign, that alignment is about as obvious as you can get, as far as I'm concerned, without someone just, shoving it in your face. It's pretty obvious. It did happen, and it was a rare alignment. But it's not the rarity that's the important thing. The important thing is when it happened. When it happened. It happened right at the height of what I call rapture fever, when everybody was waiting for end times to begin. And this reminds me a lot of at Jesus' first coming. The date for Jesus' first coming was prophesied in the book of Daniel, that there would be 69 weeks of years, and then Messiah would come. Okay, then he would be rejected. He would be left without his kingdom. He'd be cut off and have nothing. And remember, cut off means he'll be judicially excommunicated, and that he would be the covenantal sacrifice. And so people knew exactly when the Messiah was going to be coming. So when John started preaching, John the Baptist, people went to him by droves, and the Jewish leaders came and asked him, well, are you the Christ? Are you Elijah? Because we're expecting him. Okay, the same thing is true here. What we have is a sign. We're given a sign right at the height of expectation of when the rapture will happen, or when the end time events will take place. But because we've been looking for something else, or we're expecting different events to play out, we see the reality of it, but we don't know what to do with it. And if we were to incorporate it, if we were to actually embrace it as being a reality, then it would mean an upheaval. It would take a wrecking ball to my current eschatology, to my current understanding of the end times. And I just want to tell you something, that Jesus does that. Jesus will come and take a wrecking ball to the works of men. He really will. And to the traditions of men. He'll come in and just take a wrecking ball to them. Jesus went into the temple not once but twice, took out everything that seemed normal to everybody else, all the tables with the money changers and the animals and so on. That was normal. That was what the people had come to expect. But it wasn't what Christ wanted. It wasn't what God wanted. And it wasn't his way. And so he was willing to take a wrecking ball to the temple and drive everybody out. And the Revelation 12 sign, it is what it is. It's best just to say, you know what, I think I might have been wrong in the past, and I need to incorporate this new piece of information. And if it means I have to start over, go back to the drawing board, I'm willing to do that. Okay, if you're willing to go back to the drawing board, I have a timeline that has always included the Revelation 12 sign. Funny thing about that. So if you're interested in just watching a brief video about what I believe the Revelation 12 sign was telling us and how it fits into an actual timeline, an eschatological timeline, go to my Revelation chapter by chapter series. I started my video commentary on Revelation with Revelation 12, because that's where God seems to have started it. And the interesting thing is you get a whole beginning to end from Revelation 12 to the second coming of Christ in Revelation chapter 12. So the skeleton for the whole end time narrative is actually in Revelation 12. I would suggest downloading the Revelation 12 Wrecking Ball PDF, and I've tried to make this so that it's a standalone article. And the questions here, there's 4 questions that you could just ask somebody who has a pretty solid position of the things that they believe. See what they have to say, and see if this challenges their thinking, and if they're willing to change anything about the way they believe because of this new piece of information. So leave a comment in the comments section. We'll see you on another video. Till then, have a blessed day.